How do you know that your application works without any issues? A conversation about reliability will always be incomplete if we don't touch login tools such as Log4j, SLF4j, and Logback. We will also quickly talk about log management tools, which is important to master when you're working on production applications. Hi, my name is Yana Bakhtanovich, and I'm a senior software engineer. Let's get started with the key concepts of logging. Logging, in simple words, refers to the recording of an application activity. Logging stores errors, warnings, and different informational messages that occur during running of your applications. Proper logging helps developers a lot in the troubleshooting process. There are lots of available options how you may provide logging mechanism, but some common ones and most popular one are built-in Java logging. It's placed in Java util login package and represents the basic implementation of Java logging. Log4j is a de facto standard of logging for Java. SLF4j stands for Simple Login Facade for Java. Logback is a log implementation of Log4j, and Log4j2 is another log successor of Log4j2. Let's dive into these approaches. First one, built-in Java login doesn't require any external libraries or dependencies. All you need to do is to create logger by calling getLogger static method and provide string as a parameter. So first line will create logger and associate it with the string com.mjc demo. If you will use this string somewhere else in your code, you will get absolutely the same logger instance. This is very useful when you wish to combine logs from various classes into some separate place. For example, login related to payment into a separate dedicated file. Once you created logger, you may provide your log messages. For that, you need to call log method and provide as a parameter log level and your message. We will talk about log levels later, and now let's see at the result of this program. So here you may see that it printed date, time, full class path, and method where log was invoked. This is very handy thing, helps for troubleshooting a lot, and it also prints log level and your message. You may want to add logs somewhere else except console, and for that you need to add handler. For example, code in red box will create a file handler associated with logs XML file and attaches this handler to logger. So as a result, when you start your program, a new file with name logs.xml will be created and all logs will be printed into the file in addition to the console. Well, one cool thing is you can have as many handlers as you wish. And as a result, you will have messages into the console, into the separate different files, and you may set in somewhere else, and all it will be working simultaneously. Next one is log levels. Log levels help you to control log importance and whether or not log should be printed. The standard set of log levels are shown here. We use serif if in your application some horrible issue happened, warning if there are some exception, some important exception, info used to store informational messages that everyone would like to see, config used for configuration messages, and fine, finer, and finest usually used for logging some operational details. As fact, fine, finer, and finest usually refers to trace level and meant for debugging. You also may create your own log level, but I wouldn't recommend it because the standard set of log levels should be plenty. And in various logging frameworks, the naming of log levels might have some difference in naming, but the general meaning and hierarchy are pretty much the same, and I believe you won't get confused. You may set log level of your application by calling setLevel method and provide level as a parameter. And as a result, your application will write messages only at level warning and serif. All messages at level info and lower will be ignored. By the default, log level in most login frameworks are info. Thus, keep in mind if you would like to see some configuration messages or messages at level fine or finer, then you have to lower the default log level. You may set such log level by calling setLevel method, like in source code already described, or in configuration file. And you may set this log level at the root logger or in the handler. So choose what you wish. Built-in Java logging is quite simple. All you need to is create logger, attach handlers, and then you may write logs. But while developers using this approach, they started complaining that this isn't performant enough, that this isn't flexible enough, and people wanted to handle multiple different use cases and scenarios that it wasn't meant to handle. So now what we have here is a perfect confluence of factors. We have this need of a login library. One login library that sustained all these years are Log4j. Log4j means log for Java. It's a de facto standard login mechanism for Java. First step to start work with it is to provide library, or in other words, dependency. It has name Log4j, and his latest version is 1.2.17. You should always use the latest version, and this is the latest. Once you've added, you may write your solution. So again, for creating logger, you need to call getLogger method, and here provide as a parameter class name. But you also may provide string if you wish, exactly as in built-in Java login. After creation logger, you may see that logger provides standard set of methods to create log messages at the appropriate level. There are trace, debug, info, warn, error, and fatal. Logger also have a standard method with name log, which uses a parameter log level and string message as inbuilt in Java logging, so you may choose one of these two approaches. So if we run this application right now, the output will be the following. So here you may see that Log4j is enabled, but unfortunately we don't see messages that we expected. And Log4j says that there are no appenders configured. So let's configure it. Some common way to do it is to create Log4j configuration. It might be Log4j properties file or Log4j XML if you prefer XML format. Let's take a look at the Log4j properties. First line will create a root logger with the name main, and his default log level will be debug. Next one is attach console appender to that root logger. So this is exactly what Log4j asks. Console appender, it's kind of console handler, which allows logger to write logs into the console. And last two lines describe at what pattern you would like to write these messages. So here, the output of your application after adding this file is the following. And you may see that from pattern layout, %r its amount of milliseconds after application start, %t it's a thread name, %-5p it's a name of your log level, %c it's a full class path, %m it's a message, and %n move carried to the next line. So if you like XML, then that's totally fine. You may create Log4j XML, and the same configuration in such format will look as follows. The result of application execution exactly the same. Log4j have lots of different appenders. You've already seen console appender, which shows messages into the console. It also have a file appender. It saves messages into the file. There are also rolling file appender. It's an extension of file appender, and in addition to saving messages to a file, it also rotates these files. So once your file with log messages exceeds his limit, this appender will create a new file to proceed saving logs. There are also GDBC appender. It saves messages into the database, but keep in mind that generally saving messages into the database isn't really a good idea. Another appender is a socket appender. It saves serialized messages into the external socket. And last one, null appender. It doesn't save messages anywhere. It's just do nothing. That's it about Log4j. Next one popular login framework are SLF4j. It stands for Simple Login Facade for Java. It serves as a simple abstraction between your application code and any login framework, like Log4j or Logback and even built-in Java login. The good question would be, why do you need this abstraction layer at all? The answer is simple. Eventually, you may need to change your login framework or upgrade it. With an abstraction layer, it is fairly simple. All you need to do is to change your dependency, update your configuration file of your framework, and maybe change a binding. But that's it. But without this abstraction layer, you will have to change the code. Potentially lots of code. Every class where you save messages. It's not really good development experience. SLF4j itself doesn't have any implementation. It's just provide an abstraction, an API for other login frameworks to use it. First step to start with SLF4j is ending again dependency or library. With the latest version, for now is 2.0.3. After that, you add in dependency of your framework, configuration file of your framework, and then add a binding between SLF4j and login framework. I choose Log4j and his binding called SLF4j reload4j and version again 2.0.3. You may find bindings to other login frameworks on SLF4j official site. After adding this stuff, you may start writing your code. You may create logger by calling getLogger method and provide class name as a parameter or string as a parameter. And that's it. Now you may write your log messages. There are two more login frameworks I would like to talk about. There are Logback and Log4j2. I have to say that Log4j for now is deprecated. And if you need or wish to choose some login framework, it's better to choose one of these in combination with SLF4j. Now let's take a look into their advantages. Logback itself have improved performance. It worked 10 times faster than Log4j. It also have detailed and constantly updated documentation, so it will be quite easy to start work with it, just checking his documentation. Logback also supports automatic reload of his configuration files. So upon modification, so there are no need to restart your application just to get your new configs. And also file appender and rolling file appender can gracefully recover from IO exceptions. For example, if there is some issue in saving log messages into a file, then you don't need to restart the application to get your login work again. Once the file server starts work again, the appropriate logger will continue his work and rolling file append. And Logback also provides a wide array of login filters, filter options, which you may specify in the configuration file, and it do much more than just Log4j. In another hand, Log4j2 have the same advantages as Logback, and in addition provide lazy evaluation of log statements based on Lambda expressions. It also have asynchronous logger support in some low latency systems and provide garbage-free mode to avoid any latency in garbage operations. Thus, if you need these 3 additional features, then choose Log4j2. If you don't really need it, then Logback is quite a good solution. In fact, Spring Boot itself has a Logback as a default logger tool, and it's injected in starter with the name Spring Boot Starter Web. You may check it. And I also have to say that both Log4j2 and Logback have advanced support of SLF4G. Thus, there is no more need to add SLF4G dependency. So, for example, you desire to use Log4j2, add Log4j2 dependency, add configuration file, and add binding to SLF4G. And that's it. You may use it. Now you know what is logging and what log libraries are available, but no matter what log library you will choose, there are a set of recommendations, my personal recommendations I would like to follow. Firstly, never write passwords, account numbers, or any sensitive information in your log messages. It's a customer-sensitive information. It shouldn't be in logs, just to avoid any customer-sensitive information leak. Next, if you need to write log message with some parameters, it's better to prefer option with curly braces for such parameters instead of just string concatenation. The reason is simple. In the last option, you will have at least 3 strings, basic one, object as a string as a result, but in first option, it will be only 1 string. You try to keep trace and info messages to a minimum. No one wants a chatty application with not really useful informational messages. But as fact, you should always write warning and exception and error messages if something caused your code to fail in some bad or unrecoverable manner. But if there is some exception in your application with which you can deal gracefully, then you may add logger at level trace, and that would be a good solution. And last, try to don't use exception get message as your log message. Your log message should describe what you were trying to do, not just repeat what exception says. Some exceptions like null pointer exception doesn't have any messages at all. And even if they have, it didn't provide you any information about context around. So don't write exception get message. And eventually, logger itself will write this message when you're running your application, and there is no need to duplicate this information. Okay, you may write your messages into file if you're working on some small environment. But in huge environment, amount of data grows, and it becomes difficult and even unmanageable to handle all logs. And that's why you should end up using some centralization tool, some log management tool. This is the reason why most of the production applications use these tools. There are plenty of log management tools available. Some most popular one, which I saw on the projects, are Kibana, Splunk, New Relic, and Datadog. All of them have their pros and cons, have different interfaces, which you may check on their official site, but all of them are fully managed centralization tool which help you to monitor, filter, and analyze your logs. It also visualize them, create some charts, and even may give you an availability to set alarm if some critical log appeared. Understanding of log management tools came easily when you're working on production application in some team. So I would recommend you to focus more on choosing log library uh, and how to write logs properly. So I believe this slide talk give you an idea of how to write logs, how to make your application more reliable, and what log library to choose. And now I'm open to the questions.
Thanks, Yana, for the great light talk. Currently, we have only 2 questions, guys. If you have more, please ask them in the chat. The first question is, what appender do you use for a production application?
For a production application, firstly, you should always use a console appender. It will be easy when you do your development activities. Sometimes I saw, at least on my last project, saving in a file. It's also sometimes working.
Yeah, I'd like to add that some third-party tools that Yana mentioned, they can read the console of your application and just gather everything that you write here. And if you write logs to file, you have to additionally upload them somewhere. So it's probably a good solution, but it's not for all projects.
Yeah.
Okay, I will wait a bit for more questions and minutes of self-commercial, guys. We have a great free school of Java, MJC .school. You can join it and study Java from the very beginning up to Spring and other modern frameworks. Okay, and the second question that we have, what login library would you recommend to use?
Logback. Absolutely, my advice is to use Logback because in most of the cases you do not need additional features of Log4j2. Thus, Logback is a really good solution in combination with SLF4G.
Yeah, I agree. Also, Log4j is a standard tool in Spring, and it's just easier to use what is already integrated with it than to include some more tools. Okay, and we have the third question. Could you please tell about using MDC in logging? Not quite sure about scenarios when to use it.
About what? MDC?
Yeah, I'm not sure how what it means, but it's some diagnostic context. Have you worked with it?
Actually, no, have no idea what
Okay,
is it.
I think I can answer this question. It's in general just a hash map where you can put some values, and so then you can retrieve them in your log. We used it in our previous project. We had on a controller, yeah, it's a mapped diagnostic context. Thank you. On the controller level, when we received a request, we just put some request information to the MDC, and then it appeared in all our logs. So, for example, the ID of the client who sent this request. MDC can be really useful when you want to add more information to login, but not all places where you write logs have an access to this information. For example, the ID of a user. So just an elegant solution for this problem. I hope it answers your question. Okay, anything else, guys? I will wait for a couple more seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so we let's end this slide talk. Thanks, guys, for joining, and thanks, Yana, for a great presentation. See you guys the next week. Bye.
Bye bye.